Yes.
This is brilliant.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Tonight on The Wrap, Macron calls it France's biggest challenge since World War II. The French president urges fire crews to stay strong as they battle to control a monster wildfire. We'll have the latest on the fight to save Bordeaux and why fire clouds are coming to Europe for the first time. The Burnham Bounce polls show Labour neck and neck with reform for the first time in more than a year. Grief, shock and anger in Germany about why the main suspect in the Berlin Pride attack was not in jail. He was a known extremist with multiple convictions. Here in the UK, police say armed officers will be on the streets for Brighton Pride this weekend.
Ithaca's king is coming back.
Bringing vengeance.
And and how a Hollywood film has inspired an epic rush to learn ancient Greek. We'll ask if schools should bring back the classics. We'll discuss the day's biggest stories with the Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine and the Daily Mirror columnist Kevin Maguire. Plus, we're going to take a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers in about half an hour. Good evening, Sarah, Kevin, welcome both.
Good evening.
Now, the huge wildfire burning its way through France has driven more than 250,000 people from their homes. The blaze is so big that it's generating its own weather system and even lightning. The French President Emmanuel Macron has called it the biggest challenge the country has faced since the Second World War. Kevin, Sarah, what have you made of it?
It's absolutely terrifying, isn't it? I mean, Bordeaux is such a beautiful... I mean, I've been there so many times. I have friends who have a house, not there, but sort of further east, and it is it's a wonderful part of the world. And that particular part of Bordeaux is where a lot of Parisians have second homes and go there. So, I mean, it will be affecting a lot of French people as well. I think for Macron it's difficult because they have had fires there before. It is a sort of incendiary region, and he has pledged to do things, and they haven't really happened. And now we've got this terrifying situation.
We'll discuss that in more detail. Kevin?
Well, climate change deniers look like flat earthers. We're heating the planet up, we're burning it, gas, oil, coal, and rising temperatures, records being broken year after year are the result. And I'm afraid you're not going to beat this with firefighters. You're going to have to beat it how we live and stop heating the planet up.
Yeah, well, we'll discuss all of that in more detail. But first, Sky's Sadia Chaudhry reports now from Bordeaux.
If you're wondering why French authorities are cutting down trees when so many have already burnt, this is a fire break, a gap in the trees to cut off fuel supply. It slows down the fire, reduces the intensity. It is an invisible line of defense.
The fire is heading straight here, but this is one of the smartest ways to try and contain it. It reaches 15 kilometers in that direction.
Hundreds of trees that have stood here for 30 years, sacrificed to save millions of others.
We cut the forest so that it protects this strip that is going to be created, protects the forest that is behind, and also protects the village that is next to the city of Marpuy. And so we have to do this. It's important work.
And during an important window, as a pause in windy weather slows the fire down ahead of prolonged hot weather. This should help the firefighters. Around 90 of them have been injured, prompting this show of support from the French president.
I know this has affected everybody, the families, and we will be there. It's difficult because we are faced with a never-seen-before fire. We have a situation today which is the most difficult we have ever measured since the Second World War.
And for a monster this big, you need a weapon in the sky as well. French airspace now home to water bombers, some from the European Union, including 3 specialist pilots from Sweden. Their boss describes the heat in the cockpit.
Both the scooping and when they go into the fire sites is really intense for their focus, and they are going up and down. There is a lot of turbulence, and of course then it's the heat. Sometimes it can reach even hotter when on the ground. So being in that kind of hot conditions for several hours is tough.
There we go, planes in the sky. They're dumping water to try and dampen this ground. This is Cap Ferret. The fire has swept through here. You can see just how much of it is blackened and charred. And still, there are parts of this place that are smoldering. That is how hot it is. The smoke has clearly moved away from the skies. That means the sun can come straight through and heat up this ground. And that's really dangerous ahead of tomorrow's heat wave.
With temperatures forecast to hit 32 degrees, even on this land that's destroyed, there's serious risk of reignition. Sadia Chaudhry, Sky News, in the south of France.
Okay, let's get the thoughts of our guests, Sarah and Kevin. I mean, Kevin, the images there are devastating. And of course, all the attempts to try to contain this blaze haven't worked so far, not really.
No, we're pretty powerless once it happens and it spreads, and you're down to really the weather. You're praying for rain not coming, you want winds to die down, but then if it's creating its own weather pattern, the fire feeding on itself and spreading it is absolutely terrifying. We've had some fires here in Scotland, across England, some in Wales too, but nothing on this scale. I think one estimate is it's like the land that's been burned is the equivalent of 4 times the size of Paris.
No, astounding. And 220,000 people evacuated, and many of them, let's face it, will have no home to go back to.
400 million people. I mean, the thing about it, but you just look at those images and you just think you're just so humanity is so powerless in the sort of in front of the might of nature when it gets going, and it's just those little airplanes. It's like pouring a thimble on a...
This is a G7 country. This is one of the richest countries in the world.
I suppose the key thing is to stop them from starting. But the problem is you've had 3 successive heat waves, and so it's got hotter and drier, and it's the dryness that causes it, isn't it? So, I mean, I think I was talking to someone who knows a bit about this, not as much as your reporters, and they were saying that it's not so bad in the east because it's agricultural land, and there aren't so many trees, and also the farmers are allowed to irrigate the land so that it's wetter, so there's no worry there. But where you've got a lot of trees and it's very dry, that's where the problem
because it has been so dry. It's been such a dry summer. They've had heat waves in Europe, and now there's another one that could be days away, 40 degrees. Yeah,
which is very difficult to live in, actually. But it's not going to help if you're fighting a fire and you hope it's going to go out. I saw one in a place Sahara. It was about 2 miles away in Spain, southern Spain, when I was there last year. And these are pretty ferocious, and they're skilled at fighting them, as we saw them cutting the fire breaks and trying to drop the water. But there's only so much you can.
I mean, they've had one in Madrid as well, haven't they? They've had one very close to Madrid that's been getting.
Well, even there, more than 100,000 people had to be evacuated. Yeah. So it's
these are massive numbers, like 250,000. That's like a city the size of Newcastle.
Absolutely massive.
And lots of tourists that will have been caught up in the whole thing as well. Well, the wildfire is so intense that it's actually generating its own weather system. Here's our science and technology editor, Tom Clark.
After the hottest June on record in Europe, continued heat waves through July and a wet spring feeding vegetation growth, Europe's facing a fire season like it's never seen before. This is the situation, according to the latest satellite data, of fires across the continent, pretty much everywhere. The week 15th to the 22nd of July saw the greatest area burned for any July week on record for the EU. Over in France, satellite image from over the weekend showed, yes, that wind taking the smoke out over the ocean, but now that wind shifted towards the east, bringing that smoke and the fire with it, threatening the city of Bordeaux, only 7 miles from the fire front now, but also taking that smoke into the city where it can present real problems to people. The situation in France reveals that they have seen already breaking all records, not just the number of fires that they record compared to average, but also the extent of wildfires as well, the amount of area burned. And the other thing they're seeing in France, which has complicated the efforts to fight it, are something called pyrocumulonimbus. That's a fire cloud. These have only really been documented before in very intense wildfires in North America and in Australia. And what's happening here is the heat generated by that intense wildfire, fueled by forest in this Gironde area, is taking hot air high into the atmosphere, up to 9 kilometres high, drawing winds in below it and creating very similar conditions that you see during a thunderstorm. Those winds can essentially create the fire's own weather system, making them very hard to predict and manage. But they can also, if it gets intense enough, cause lightning strikes, dry lightning, no rain, which is the downside here, but that lightning can cause subsequent fires. That's something authorities in France haven't seen before. The scale of this fire, something they haven't dealt with in recent history, and fits very much in the models that climate scientists put out for what is still the fastest warming continent on the planet, Europe, right now.
Tom Clark reporting there. Absolutely terrifying, the whole issue of the fire cloud, that you get lightning but no rain, so it's the worst. And I guess it points to Europe effectively now having the kind of extreme climate that we've never really had.
And we're not really equipped for it. I mean, particularly in the UK. I mean, all our houses are built to hold heat. They're not built to keep heat out. This is why people suffer so much during these heat waves. And also we've just got, I mean, Britain has got swathes of forest. You know, the trees.
Isn't there thinking about if this was happening?
Yeah, so, and that's one of the joys of this country, is it's very green, but it's got all these trees, and trees are kindling in a situation like that.
Yeah, well, I hope it's challenging those who say, well, they used to deny climate change, then they used to deny people were creating it, and then they used to argue countries like Britain, well, emissions are really 1% or whatever, it's nothing to do with us, so you can't change it. Yes, you can. You've got to show leadership around the world now. We've got to stop burning fossil fuels to generate electricity. We're going to use them for some time.
And so has China, and all the other places that are doing the things that they should. I mean, places like China need to stop, but they don't care, because it's not going. If it doesn't affect them,
China's got a massive solar program now. Absolutely.
I mean, it's interesting how Europe, though, as Tom Clark was saying, is the part of the world that's heating up the fastest.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because we've always been one of the reasons that Europe has been so successful, actually, for so long, is because it has such a temperate climate, and it's very easy to manage stuff when you have a very temperate climate. Your crops don't fail, you know, all this kind of stuff. You can become very wealthy, very successful, and if that is about to change, that's going to change the geopolitics of the world. I mean, it's a long way off, presumably, but it is. If you think about it, if you sort of extrapolate what's happening, it's quite scary.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting if it changes the politics towards net zero once this emergency is over in a lot of European countries.
Net zero is popular. Actually, in the UK, there is widespread public support for net zero. It's kind of a myth by some political parties that it's unpopular. People think it's quite right. We have to look after the planet and get off fossil fuels.
But there might also have to be some thoughts about, husbandry and how we manage our landscape and stuff.
Absolutely, and how you cope with a fire like that. OK, let's move on now and look at Andy Burnham, who met his first foreign leader today as Prime Minister, welcoming Ukraine's President Zelensky to Portsmouth. He also had good news closer to home. Here's our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, to explain.
Nigel Farage and Andy Burnham are now neck and neck as the new Prime Minister steps out onto the world stage for the first time. A week in, and there's a Burnham bounce. For the first time since last April, Labour is no longer behind Reform. A new YouGov Sky News Times poll puts Labour and Reform UK both on 22, the Tories on 21, Greens on 13 and Lib Dems on 11. It's the first time Labour hasn't been behind Nigel Farage's Reform in 15 months. But Andy Burnham told me he knows he can't bank on the polls. You do know that what goes up can come down, right?
Indeed. Yeah, of course. I mean, I wouldn't get carried away by any poll. I am talking a lot about Britain believing again and getting its hope back, and I'm not going to apologise for that.
He's here in Portsmouth, doing some things the same as his predecessor, like standing shoulder to shoulder with President Zelensky.
We are with Ukraine 100%. I am personally with you 100%.
But he's doing some things differently too. Unlike Rachel Reeves, he has shut down suggestions that he might scrap stamp duty or council tax in the first budget later this year. Could you reassure people looking to buy right now that you won't change or scrap stamp duty in the next budget?
Yes, I can say that quite clearly. That won't be happening.
And on the side of a political honeymoon, calling for cross-party talks. Andy Burnham not letting differences on tax with the Tories scupper hopes for social care reform.
Credit to the leaders of the two main parties, Kemi Badenoch and Ed Davey, both of whom have reached out over the weekend to say they're prepared to engage in talks. I think, it's one thing to say that and, another to actually then mean it and try and find common ground. But let's try.
On the world stage, praise from a global figure rises in the polls, enjoying the moment while it lasts.
Well, Andy Burnham continues to have a very busy sort of first few days in government. Rob Powell joins us now. What is planned for the coming days?
Yeah, tomorrow, a lot of the papers reporting on Andy Burnham's latest intervention coming then on youth unemployment, essentially how to get more young people into work. And it'll have a very devolution flavour to it. essentially he'll be telling local areas and schools to tailor their curriculum to the jobs needs, the labour market needs of local areas. So basically getting local leaders to identify the priorities in the labour market in their area and then working with the schools to try and make sure from age 14 you're introducing technical training as well as academic training to try and meet those needs. So the idea being that companies get the workers they need, but also that young people, when they come out of school, rather than sort of falling off the edge of that and into welfare, as we've seen happen a lot over the last 4 or 5 years, are able to have a sort of smoother transition into the workplace. I guess the two things I'd say about it, one is that tomorrow you'll be hearing a lot about the jobs and getting people into work aspect of this. The flip to that is also clearly to bring down the welfare bill. The problem that I guess the issue Keir Starmer ran up against was he sort of did it the wrong way round. He talked about how to reduce the welfare bill and majored on that and got the politics back to front. Interestingly, one of the people that sort of orchestrated the rebellion against Keir Starmer over that was one Louise Haigh, who is now Andy Burnham's deputy. And they are, I think, making sure they get it the other way round and major on the work aspect of it. The second bit is Pat McFadden, the Work and Pension Secretary, is still in place. He served under Keir Starmer as well. Earlier this year, they went out to the Netherlands, where they have a very devolved approach to tackling youth unemployment as well. So actually, I don't think, even though you're going to see Andy Burnham's political persona stamped all over this tomorrow, it's kind of quite in keeping with where I think the government was probably going on this anyway. The Alan Milburn review, the second part of it, is going to come out later this year as well. So I think not for the first time and probably not for the last, you're seeing something that is probably sneakily similar to where the Starmer government would have ended up, but you are probably seeing Andy Burnham being able to get the politics around it.
Well, because, as he said himself, he's got the political capital potentially to push some things through. And, today he's been talking about social care, known as one of the impossible themes almost. So what have you made of it?
Yeah, he's neck and neck now. His polling is really good. So he's taking advantage of that, and that's the right thing to do.
Neck and neck with the reform.
Yeah, neck and neck with the reform, which is great because they haven't had that kind of bounce for ages. And I think, generally speaking, people seem to be responding quite well to what he's doing. I think this is a really important issue. I know lots of young people because of the age of my children, and very few of them have got meaningful jobs. They're really struggling. So I think putting in place mechanisms to make it easier for young people to get jobs is important. Because we've had I was reading, there was a story on the front page of the Times today about young people who are on PIP getting sort of £100 more than young people who are working. So there's obviously anomalies in the system that need to be ironed out, and I think he's doing the right thing to tackle it. And it feels like he's tackling the welfare bill problem in a slightly more politically intelligent way than Keir Starmer ever did, and really sort of drilling down into various bits of detail and seeing where things can be tweaked. Let's face it, he hasn't got a lot of wriggle room, actually. So he's got to box quite clever with all of this stuff. And I mean, apart from the fact that he keeps wearing a black T-shirt instead of a shirt and tie, he seems to be doing quite well on all this stuff. I mean, I'm
Maybe
probably not supposed to say that.
Zelensky feel at home.
OK, JD Vance.
Yes, sorry, I like my politicians in a tie. But I think, and also I'd like him to stop making so many TikToks. But apart from that, he's you've got to give him a bit of credit at this stage, I think, I mean...
There's a second poll out today. This is Sky poll, hasn't even Stevens, but the second poll, I think, is more in common, has Labour 4 ahead, 28 Reforms 24. But I think on welfare reform, since Pat McFadden's been Work and Pension Secretary, I think there's the only stormtrooper who survived the purge by Burnham only a week ago today. It's amazing, really. I think he's only been there for a week because it feels much longer than that. I think on welfare reform, the words are broadly the same, but he's singing them in a different way, so it sounds a very different tune. And it's still very broad brush at the moment. I think we have to wait probably for the Milburn review to actually get the detail of how you do it. Because it's, the stories today about schools tailor curriculums to the local jobs market. We know how you're going to get around the autonomy for academies with that. It sounds a good idea. And, of course, there are 14, 15, 16-year-olds who become disengaged from education if you can get them involved vocationally, that is a good idea. But it's, you know, how you actually do it is really what you want to know. You know, come back to the suffragettes, it's deeds, not words. Yeah.
Okay. What did you make of what he said about social care and asking the other parties to work together or crosstalks?
I mean, social care is a really important issue and has been a very important issue for a long time. And Boris Johnson tried to do stuff on it. Theresa May tried to do stuff on it, and it's always stalled just because the numbers are so big and it's just so much money. The sensible thing to do with social care is to do what they probably do, in my opinion, is to do what they do on the continent, which is that they have a sort of mutuelle system. They have Italy, France, Spain. They all broadly have the same system, where it's a private-public partnership where people pay a proportion according to their ability, and the state sort of tops it up. And I think. If he tries to bring it into the NHS wholesale, sorry, I've dropped my pen, he's going to get into trouble because the NHS is already malfunctioning. It's not properly run. It's a money pit. Yeah. Just bolting this on, I think
they
is
estimate
going to be problematic.
that it would be an additional 18.5 billion a year. And it's just worth pointing out that his own father, I understand, is quite unwell, so it's something...
Yeah,
no, I understand that.
And Scotland has its own system already, which is different to that in England, I believe. Wales, but Kemi Badenoch, Conservative leader, said she'd cooperate, but then, and just as Burnham has said, great, but then all of a sudden she said, no, we're not having any new taxes for it, so she's not cooperating. Nigel Farage Reform have said the same, because when he was Health Secretary back in 2010, he proposed a national care service, and that was going to be funded by a levy on people's estates when they die, and you get free care when you're alive. But then the Conservatives painted that as a death tax with big tombstones, I recall, in the 2010 election. And, of course, when Theresa May proposed a system, it was a dementia tax, and it becomes very party political. I think it's one of those issues that is so huge you'd love everyone to agree. But I think there are just fundamental principles. I mean, now, you say mutuality, you then pay through an insurance policy. That's what you say. Yeah. You have to be aware of the T&Cs doing that. Or you can pay through taxation. It's got to be paid for in some way. It's just, who pays, how much and when.
We're running out of time, and I'd just love to get your thoughts about his welcoming of Volodymyr Zelensky. First time that he welcomes a foreign leader as Prime Minister. I know he wasn't wearing a tie. You don't approve, Sarah. What else did you make of it?
Well, I want to know, was it pre-arranged? Was this a meeting that was already in the diary, or did he arrange this since he became Prime Minister? Because I think if he did, it was quite clever, because Zelensky is the kind of coolest guy on the planet, right? So if you're
and it sends a message.
If you're casting yourself as the coolest Prime Minister ever in the history of England, Britain, which is what is he doing, then you should also meet the coolest guy.
Can there be a Prime Minister, President, Chancellor of Europe whose first visit isn't Zelensky, who's a brilliant diplomat?
I don't know.
Because he knows he's got to go.
They did have an announcement, though, about these stone cloak electronic systems on drones.
But, but it's just, two cool guys hanging out.
Well, what did you make of it?
I think he probably had to do it on the basis that Andy Burnham has a sort of unashamedly more domestic focus to his agenda. If anything, that's the reason why he was brought in, to focus on that really knotty stuff in the UK. And I think the one worry that emanates from that is, has he got his eye on the sort of seriousness of some of the foreign threats that we face, not least the impact of the war in Ukraine. So I think getting something like this in early is just, it's a nod to, obviously, Ukraine, it's a nod to European allies, but it's also maybe a signal across the Atlantic to Donald Trump as well to say, look, the sort of resolve is not wavering at all. Yes, we will be talking a lot more about, social care and technical qualifications than we necessarily will be talking about Ukraine and China, but actually our position on Ukraine is staying the same.
And poor old Zelensky, this is his 5th British Prime Minister. He must be quite bored of having this meeting.
I was like, UK again.
We only saw the last one about 10 days ago, didn't we?
Not you lot again.
Anyway, let's take a look at another story now. Armed police will be deployed to protect people at this year's Brighton Pride Festival. Specialist teams, including plainclothes officers, will also be on the streets following the attack on Berlin's Pride event over the weekend, in which one person was killed. There is growing anger in Germany about why the main suspect, who was a known extremist, was not in jail. It's because they found out almost straight away. I mean, they knew that he had previously been arrested, convicted, and you know, he had links to ISIS and what they call the Islamist scene in Berlin, and yet he was walking free.
Well, he tried to join ISIS and they rejected him. So, I mean, that's a very odd thing, isn't it? He's obviously not either a very bad or a very unwell person. But I think that attacking it just. I mean, I'm glad that there's going to be a police presence in Brighton. I suspect nothing will happen here.
I suspect there's always now, unfortunately, that an armed presence at big events like a Pride Day, and it's dispiriting because that wouldn't have been the case in the past. But in Germany, they'd be quite right to ask all the questions. What do we know? Could we have prevented it? And you want, because there may be somebody else like that you want to deal with before they.
But it's like Anne Widdecombe's killer. You know, you don't know, is this person an extremist or are they just sort of mad outliers?
We won't, for legal reasons, we won't know and be able to discuss fully until after a trial.
But there are all these.
Suspect.
There are these sort of, you know, there are these lone wolf attacks that seem to be happening more and more, and you just, you know, what's causing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Rob, do we know if, you know, there was heightened state for various attacks in general? Is this specifically because of what happened in Germany? Do we know that?
Well, I mean, the general terror level is always set. I remember every time we ask about this in lobby briefings, they always say, well, the general terror threat level is set independently by the, I forget the acronym for it now, but a separate centre. So, yeah, I'm not sure really, but it's just sad, isn't it, that when you go to sort of joyous events like that, that there's always something sort of lurking in the back of your mind about what could happen.
It was notched up some months ago, but it hasn't changed today.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Wes Streeting was speaking, I think, to Trevor Phillips on Sunday, and he said it kind of highlights as well why pride parades like what we had in Berlin and what we're going to see in Brighton are still important, you know, because obviously it was targeted, presumably specifically because of that. Well, we're going to take a first look at what is in the front page of tomorrow's papers.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Time now to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Well, according to the Financial Times, one of Andy Burnham's planned welfare reforms involves asking schools to tailor their curriculum to encourage pupils to get into work that might be needed locally. Teach pupils for local jobs is how The Guardian describes it. And that story is also on the front page of The Telegraph with this headline: Burnham axes Blair's university vision. Andy Burnham is also on the front of the Daily Mail with speculation the new Prime Minister could impose a 10% tax on all inheritance. The Eye describes the fight against European wildfires as a race against time before the next heat wave hits. The Metro reports on the sentencing hearing for funeral director Robert Bush, including emotional testimony from the loved ones of people whose remains he mistreated. Sorry will never be enough is how the Mirror sums up those victim impact statements. Well, also on that story, The Express has the headline, bodies were piled up like in a horror scene. Meanwhile, the Star pays tribute to the comedian and wildlife presenter Bill Oddie, whose death was announced today. Okay. So lots of different stories there on the front pages and quite a lot of pictures, of course, coming from Europe. But let's start by looking at the front page of The Guardian. That story that we were also talking about a little bit earlier with Rob. Teach pupils for local jobs, Burnham tells schools. And as we were mentioning there, it's a change, Sarah, isn't it, from the Tony Blair era, kind of pushing everyone into uni.
Yes, the Telegraph are right to point this out, actually, because that was the whole drive of he wanted 50% of people to go to university, and that's been the sort of. But now ever since university fees came in, really, there's been this gradual sense that, are these degrees actually worth it? There's been a lot of criticism of some degrees just not being university students not finding work. Again,
the cost of the loans.
And you end up with £50,000 worth of debt before you've even started. And I think there's a sense that there are far too many people overqualified to do none of the things that we want them to do, and perhaps there has to be a return to a more vocational set of training. I mean, the Conservatives did try this with apprenticeships and, trying to big up vocational training, but it's very difficult to get the balance right.
Why do you think they failed then?
Well, I think a lot of people do still want their kids to go to university, actually. I think that's a very fundamental thing, this sort of sense that, especially if you didn't go to university, it feels like a progression, doesn't it? And, so I suppose, and I think the idea that you say to your 16-year-old, well, why don't you just be a plumber, those jobs are very well paid and they're very in demand. Yeah. But perhaps, because of the Tony Blair thing, there's a sense that you should...
Interestingly, AI might change that, though, because now there's a lot of jobs that are very vulnerable, and actually being a plumber is not.
I was the first in my family to go to university, and I didn't bother going to graduation. Yes, I did graduate and get a degree, but I just got it set in the post. But as a visiting professor at the University of Sunderland, you see the pride of the students and the parents and their families on graduation day, and a lot of them are first-generation students, and it's very, very moving. Now, that target of 50%, I think it was probably the right target. And the people who own and run the country, they send all their kids, because you look up if you go up the deciles, the cohorts of income, the people at the top, very high percentage go to university, and it comes down. Almost every decile comes down, and the poorest or the lowest earning 10% send the fewest proportions. And I think to try and get those kids into university is a noble goal for them and the country. Now, Keir Starmer at the last Labour conference in Liverpool effectively dropped the 50% because he started talking more broadly in the number of kids doing vocational training. And I think it's right. You want the two together.
You mentioned AI.
You don't want vocational training to be second best.
No, you don't.
You know, but if you've got a whole different system of qualifications, instead of you want the same qualifications. You might be academic, you might be vocational, might be a mix, but you want the.
But actually, you want a job and a career.
You want a job and a career. But the thing is there is this still. I think there is still a hangover from the grammar school, secondary modern days, where if you went to grammar school, it was because you were academic, you were somehow sort of. And then if you went to secondary modern, it was because it was a more kind of vocational trade. And I think there's a snobbery around that still persists, totally wrongly, because it's irrational. Yeah. But I think AI, you mentioned AI, I think AI is really important because people who are in the world of AI have said this. They have said that AI will take those jobs that are traditionally white-collar jobs, and then the ones that will remain will be the manual jobs, which, we don't really teach anymore.
I think it was the Times or the Sunday Times a few weeks ago that had a whole list of the professions that were really threatened by AI. I mean, things like lawyers, actually. So it'd be interesting to see whether maybe he can... we don't say that. It'd be interesting to see whether he might use the changes that AI
for example,
are bringing
things like, translators. Now it's all done by AI. So and these are jobs that, are very skilled, but because AI has this fast processing capacity. I would like to say, I did write a piece in the Mail on Sunday about AI and about Burnham, and I think it's it is probably one of the most important things that should be on his list, because we need to have a strategy to deal with AI, because it is coming and it is going to change the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just don't get that sense yet.
Yeah. But we do need more plumbers, electricians, builders, carers, people doing all those jobs. But they haven't been as highly prized, and Burnham recognises that, and he's spoken repeatedly about the need to have more vocational training and stop it appearing as Cinderella service.
If we look at the front pages, The Guardian had the straight take, and actually the angle of universities was the headline in the Daily Telegraph. That's up there. Burnham axes Blair's university vision. Let's talk about some other announcements that Andy Burnham has made. Front page of the Daily Mail, let's go to you, Sarah. Their headline, Burnham's 18 billion death tax nightmare. Now, this presumably is linked to some of the announcements, which he hasn't really made, but sort of hinted at, for social care. Why are they calling it a death tax?
Well, because the idea that you're going to take people's inheritance away to pay, I think most people... I think that, again, there's a perception that you would like to leave something for your children or for the next generation. And if you're going to be taxed hard on what you have saved up all your life and the assets that you have accrued... Kevin is smiling at me in a really
we'll find out why soon.
I always say to my children, if I leave them something and they pay inheritance tax, they've done incredibly well.
So, but I do... I think that it will be felt as so many of the... So the mood music coming from Burnham is quite, let's clobber the middle classes, let's clobber the south of England. And I think, the Daily Mail is a champion for those people. And I think the Daily Mail feels quite rightly, as do I, that, if you work hard and you save and you're a striver, you should be able to keep as much of it as you want or as you can and pass it on.
I don't think...
So this is quite a fundamental thing.
I don't think that is his tune and what he's planning to do. He's not out to clobber the middle classes and the...
He's going to come up with 18 billion somehow.
Yes, you do. And, of course, now the big complaint from the middle classes is parents having to sell their homes to pay for their care. Somebody's got to pay for this care. I don't want my parents' home sold. I want to inherit it. Well, how are you going to pay? So you can either pay through a tax system and try and make it fair, or you're going to be selling your house, because you have to contribute to your care if you've got assets of more than £24,000. And many middle class families are being hit by the current system.
You can come up with Alzheimer's care or dementia care or sort of adult social care costs about £100,000 a year. And that's not even...
So who's going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it?
Well, I think we should look at the European model.
Yeah, but then you're going to have to pay. You have to pay premiums for 100,000. They're going to be sky high.
Well, you could plan for
those premiums. If you come up,
people pay into their pensions.
If you come up with a publicly
private health,
if you come with a publicly funded system, and it's when you're dead, and as my mum says, shrouds have no pockets. You can't take it with you. The money comes from your from your estate, you will have you may be able to have free care when you're.
Well, it'll be interesting to see when he actually outlines what his plans are, you know, where that goes. But let's take a look and hear what Kemi Badenoch has been saying. Front page of the Telegraph. Now she's demanded that Labour introduce emergency legislation to stop the early release of serious sexual and violent offenders.
She's completely right about this. I mean,
and the early release thing has been in the news, of course.
But why are they releasing these people? There are lots of people in jails who could be released who aren't paedophiles, who aren't murderers. Why are they releasing violent criminals? I don't understand it. It's the problem. The thing about this is that a lot of the victims of paedophile gangs are feeling. I mean, they're getting letters basically saying the guy who totally ruined your existence is about to be out in September.
I mean, there's huge
nothing we can do about it. We can't tell you whether he's going to live. We can't tell you what he's going to be doing. They seem to have no rights at all. All the rights seem to be with the criminals.
I mean, but the push is prison overcrowding.
Well, of course, the push is prison overcrowding. But I mean, successive Justice Secretaries have tried to do something about prison overcrowding, but nobody ever wants to spend any money on it.
Sarah. Kemi Badenoch has more neck than a giraffe on this. In the last Conservative government built an extra net 500 prison places, that was all. Had its own early release scheme because it had the problem, courts were sentencing people, there wasn't anywhere for them to go. I agree Burnham's reviewing now who gets let out early, and somehow you want to exclude rapists, paedophiles, sex offenders. It probably means fraudsters and other bad criminals are going to get out early, and the people who were the victims of those will kick back. But you don't want cop killers, for instance, coming out. But it's a terrible choice that has been bequeathed by the last government to this government, because you can't just conjure up a whole load of new prison places. I saw Nigel Farage saying, deport foreign criminals. Yeah, great idea. So you commit a crime, then you just get deported. Then that means you don't serve a sentence, or open what he called Nightingale prisons. Whenever an asylum centre is proposed on an old army camp, Reform are first saying don't have it there. I don't think people would want army camps housing criminals. But I mean, never mind where you are going to get the prison officers to run them.
You can do these deals, sort of Rwanda-style deals. David Cameron did a deal with Jamaica to build prisons there so that Jamaican nationals who were
all takes time,
crimes,
unfortunately,
and they just didn't spend the money on what. So it's very complicated and very difficult. There have been some sensible proposals in the past, but they've never really come to anything because we keep changing Prime Minister, and every time we change Prime Minister, everyone changes their mind about what needs to happen. And this is one area where you really need consistency.
Yeah, because obviously it's so emotive for anyone.
Well, yes, and it's very it's a lot of political capital to expend as well. For example, you have to be very bold, and you have to do things that are really quite difficult.
Yeah,
and you can't do that if you're trying to keep your bounce.
OK, let's end by looking at the front page of the Daily Star, which, of course, celebrates the life of Bill Oddie, who passed away today. We've lost a goodie and a bestie. That was the tribute by Chris Peckham. Very sad news, Kevin.
He was. I'd forgotten he was originally on Springwatch.
I know, he was on so many.
Yeah, but because I remember him at the Goodies in particular, which I found very, very funny. It was kind of a... Not quite a sharp Monty Python, but it was very, very funny. He used to have really great adverts in the made-up adverts. And I'm sure there was one that said something like, if you don't eat white sliced bread, you're more likely to be run over by a herd of elephants. So like 4 out of 10 doctors said...
They were sort of 70s icons, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. And then he did all these bird-watching programmes, but he was very engaging because he was struggling with mental health issues, and you kind of got to admire somebody who kept coming back, because it must have been very, very difficult for him at times.
So many comedians do have mental health issues, don't they? It's a thing. No, I always remember him as a twitcher. Because that's what because I was not in this country for the Goodies. I don't really understand that.
Don't they hate being called twitchers? Don't they be birders? I mean, twitchers.
I apologise.
Sorry, I mean,
I apologise to the twitching community if I have
They'll get in touch.
No. The birder community, I think, is the one you have to apologise to.
Anyway, on that note, let's
moving on, Sophie.
But now let's take a look at the league table. It's almost certainly the only time this season we'll see Spurs at the top, and that's because it's not points but pounds and possibly the most expensive shirt in English football history. Let's take a quick look there. Well, the new Spurs shirt is on sale for £90. Chelsea's is just 1 penny cheaper at £89.99, just to say that it's not 90. And no fewer than 7 clubs, including champions Arsenal, will charge you £85 to wear their colours.
And by the way, that's probably just one of the shirts, because they always do 3 or 4.
Well, there's the away, and then
there's the away, there's the spare, there's the, footballers' mums
the kids' shirts are often almost as expensive, even though they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Kevin?
I think it's a rip-off and exploitation. I see Sunderland are at 70. I don't think we've released our home shirt for this season, but there's a second or third shirt being released, although Newcastle are more expensive at 85. They exploit it because you're a fan, you've got nowhere else to go. I know you have a choice whether you buy or not. I don't buy a shirt. I've got a 1990 replica. I just keep... I know, well, it'll never be out of date. Yeah. But it's kind of, there's going to be a new football regulator.
Yeah.
And I hope that new football regulator gets in on
Caps the
shirts.
Yeah, I think
now, absolutely, because...
I mean, they cost literally I'm sure they cost nothing to make.
Well, there's a rising market now in counterfeit shirts.
I think a lot of people are going to be...
Because of this.
A lot of people are going to be encouraging their children to support Hull City, because they have the cheapest shirt on the
How
list.
much is the...
I think it's 49...
64.
£64.
I'm not sure there'll be that many.
But even,
I don't know, but that's what I would be doing.
Come on, the Tigers.
But even championship teams, their shirts are around 60.
Yeah.
Kids' shirts, 44.
I mean, I've spent a fortune over the years because my son supports Chelsea, which is historic.
The thing with kids, you need to buy a new one every year.
Every year.
Otherwise,
But actually, a lot of adults want the new shirt. They want that season's shirt. And, great. And again, it's a choice whether you do it, the price, but I still feel it's a bit steep because you can't just switch clubs. Your allegiance is absolutely solid, and I think clubs should recognise that instead of just squeezing fans and seeing them as cash cows.
I agree.
Going to have to leave it there. All right, coming up, if the Odyssey is all Greek to you, well, maybe you should consider following thousands of others and actually learning the language. Maybe. We'll talk about it next. Stay with us.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Over the next 45 days, an estimate 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna. Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. We take you to the heart of the story in the largest democracy in the world.
The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
I bet right now you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation.
So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Christopher Nolan's film adaptation of The Odyssey has been a box office hit, but it also seems to have inspired thousands to learn Greek. An analysis of Google searches by the language learning platform Preply shows that searches for Learn Greek in the UK have risen by nearly 550% in a month. Well, here's some of the trailer.
Ithaca's king is coming back.
Bringing vengeance. Bringing it all.
Now, worth clarifying, we're talking about ancient Greek, and even though Homer's Odyssey was composed in ancient Greek nearly 3,000 years ago, experts say the film has inspired audiences to connect with the mythology and history depicted in Nolan's latest blockbuster. Well, Dr. Lucy Jackson, the Associate Professor of Classics and Ancient History at the University of Durham, is delighted by what's happening.
It's a really exciting thing when so many people are coming into contact with something that we perhaps slightly jealously have guarded, but something that we hold incredibly dear and something that we know a lot about. And to have that shared with so many people is really exciting. And it's been great to see such a brilliant response.
You can see how anyone who studies ancient Greek for a living would be super excited right now.
So excited.
Are you inspired to learn it?
I think any language that Matt Damon wants to speak, I'm happy to
Even
learn.
ancient Greek?
Even ancient Greek, if that's going to get me. But no, I went to school in Italy, so we dabbled a little bit. It's awfully difficult, ancient Greek.
Yeah.
Latin I could just about do, but Greek is really it's all Greek to me.
Yeah, and not useful. I mean, I don't want to sound, but...
No, well, I love Dr. Jackson's enthusiasm.
Yes.
Because, people will want to talk to her at parties now rather than ignore her.
Yes.
Of course,
but the Latin Brigade are probably saying, what about us?
What about us? Of course, Tom Holland stars in the film, and then there's the historian Tom Holland. They share the same name, and Tom Holland is a Greek obsessive too. He's very excited about the whole thing. It's rather sweet, the whole sort of excitement among the Greek scholar community about this.
I think this craze will last a month, and then it'll be gone.
Do you think?
Should it be gone, though? I mean, is there an argument that actually studying the classics is not necessarily learning Greek has a point?
Studying the classics is very useful. I mean, I have to say, I did Latin at school, and it made it a lot easier to learn other languages because obviously they have the root, and also the literature is fantastic. I mean, the Greek plays are extraordinary, and Medea, all those things. They're things that people would probably enjoy, and also they still resonate today. The thing about the Odyssey is it resonates today with modern audiences, because it's a sort of perennial tale of human behaviour, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely, but is it not something though that's also seen as slightly elitist? And we were just talking earlier about university and actually perhaps learning a trade being more useful. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, it is elitist, but look, it's probably good people study it. I'm not going to do it myself. My book club's just decided to read the Odyssey. I struggled through the Iliad 40 years ago, so I'm not looking forward to this.
You can watch the film.
But look, I can see why. Yeah, I mean,
you've waited this long.
Jason the Argonauts isn't bad as well if you're looking for something this weekend. But there's a limit to how much you can put on the curriculum. If Andy Burnham's correctly going to raise up vocational training, it'd be nice if every school offered ancient Greek and Latin and everything, but the truth is there aren't the resources and choices have to be made. Because some private schools, a limited number of private schools can offer it, it does become elitist, but it's better some people study it than none.
We're going to have to leave it there, but it'll be interesting to see if the fad survives the next few weeks. Now, we'll have more on the wildfires sweeping across mainland Europe on The Wrap right after the break. Stay with us.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Tonight on The Wrap, Macron calls it France's biggest challenge since World War II. The French president urges fire crews to stay strong as they battle to control a monster wildfire. We'll have the latest on the fight to save Bordeaux and why fire clouds are coming to Europe for the first time. As polls show Labour bouncing back against reform, Andy Burnham reveals his next big idea, getting schools to teach children the skills they need to get jobs locally. Grief, shock and anger in Germany about why the main suspect in the Berlin Pride attack was not in jail. He was a known extremist with multiple convictions. Here in the UK, police say armed officers will be on the streets for Brighton Pride this weekend. We'll discuss the day's biggest stories with the Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine and the Daily Mirror columnist Kevin Maguire. Plus, we'll take a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers in half an hour. Good evening, Sarah, Kevin, welcome both. Now, the huge wildfire burning its way through France has driven more than 250,000 people from their homes. The blaze is so big that it's generating its own weather system and even lightning. The French President, Emmanuel Macron, has called it the biggest challenge the country has faced since the Second World War. Sarah and Kevin, your thoughts?
It is a huge challenge, and it's the consequence of global temperatures rising because the world population's gone up and we're burning the planet. And you see temperature record after record being broken, and we're dealing with the consequences now in Europe. It's not just around the world. It's not just the Maldives going underwater. It is the future of Europe too.
Yeah. The planet is actually burning us. And I think these wildfires across Europe are particularly frightening because we've always been a very temperate zone, and that's what's always enabled us to be such a success, you know, and to be such a functional society. And when you look at countries like Africa who have had to deal with this kind of thing for much longer than us, and you see the difficulties they face in terms of famine and all sorts of problems like that, and you think that's probably coming down the line for us. So I think there have to be some measures put into place, you know, in terms of sort of land husbandry and how we manage our forests, you know, and all that kind of stuff. You know, Macron is a little bit behind the curve on this because he was supposed to do something about this area of France, and he hasn't really done it. He was going to buy more planes and, you know, the Scoopy water planes, and that didn't happen. So, you know, he's right. It is a massive crisis.
We'll discuss all of that in detail. And, of course, hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced. Sadia Chowdhury now reports from Bordeaux.
If you're wondering why French authorities are cutting down trees when so many have already burnt, this is a fire break, a gap in the trees to cut off fuel supply. It slows down the fire, reduces the intensity. It is an invisible line of defense.
The fire is heading straight here, but this is one of the smartest ways to try and contain it. It reaches 15 kilometers in that direction.
Hundreds of trees that have stood here for 30 years, sacrificed to save millions of others.
We cut the forest so that it protects this strip that is going to be created, protects the forest that is behind, and also protects the village that is next to the city of Marpuy. And so we have to do this. It's important work.
And during an important window, as a pause in windy weather slows the fire down ahead of prolonged hot weather. This should help the firefighters. Around 90 of them have been injured, prompting this show of support from the French president.
I know this has affected everybody, the families, and we will be there. It's difficult because we are faced with a never-seen-before fire. We have a situation today which is the most difficult we have ever measured since the Second World War.
And for a monster this big, you need a weapon in the sky as well. French airspace now home to water bombers, some from the European Union, including 3 specialist pilots from Sweden. Their boss describes the heat in the cockpit.
Both the scooping and when they go into the fire sites is really intense for their focus, and they are going up and down. There is a lot of turbulence, and of course then it's the heat. Sometimes it can reach even hotter when on the ground. So being in that kind of hot conditions for several hours is tough.
There we go, planes in the sky. They're dumping water to try and dampen this ground. This is Cap Ferret. The fire has swept through here. You can see just how much of it is blackened and charred. And still, there are parts of this place that are smouldering. That is how hot it is. The smoke has clearly moved away from the skies. That means the sun can come straight through and heat up this ground. And that's really dangerous ahead of tomorrow's heat wave.
With temperatures forecast to hit 32 degrees, even on this land that's destroyed, there's serious risk of reignition. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News, in the south of France.
And we've had some breaking news coming into us from the Gironde prefecture, which of course is the area where the fires are, on the state of the wildfires. They're saying the fire has not gained any ground in the last 24 hours, despite numerous flare-ups addressed across the majority of sectors. In the face of a situation that remains highly unpredictable, the mobilization remains full and complete, particularly on the eve of a day with a significant rise in temperatures expected and a drop in humidity. So that coming into us from the Gironde prefecture, saying, good news that the fire hasn't gained any ground over the past 24 hours, of course, tempered by the fact that they're waiting for yet another heat wave, expecting temperatures of 40 degrees and humidity down, which is just the worst situation.
And this devastation is going, these are people's houses. Look at them. They are just absolutely, there's nothing left, is there? It's a tragedy.
They'll have lost everything in those houses. But not gaining any ground. You're right. It's kind of it's a relief, but you.
Well, at least it's under control because it's at the door of Bordeaux.
They've mobilised, but the Guardian correspondent talks about it being the size, land the size of 4 times of Paris. It's an enormous area that's gone up in flames.
Yeah. The language, the pictures are apocalyptic. The way they haven't been able to contain it, the same. And of course, there are a lot of. It's a strange area. There's a lot of forests. There's a lot of tourism. Bordeaux is actually quite a big
It's quite
city.
a concentrated part of France, actually. Yeah. And it does have these winds because it's and as you said earlier, if the wind had just gone in the other direction, it probably would have been
hit the coast,
you wouldn't have noticed. But it is quite, and it's a very economically active part of France. This is going to cost them a lot of money apart from anything else.
But there seems to be more of these fires too in the UK. There was one in Yorkshire, I think it was near Whitby. It went on for weeks last year. There's one in the Cairngorms. I think it's still alight now. There've been others
and that's been going on for nearly 2 weeks.
Yeah, so.
And also the question
it is a result of climate change, and you can't deny climate change, and it is making us more susceptible to these fires. And the number of people in the world burning so many fossil fuels is creating that climate change, and we've got to stop creating the climate change, or we'll all suffer.
But also, people have to be very careful about fire. Some of the fires that they had in Italy were started by people. There's a lot of mad arsonists around who just don't pay attention. They just chuck their fag out of the window.
Some willfully, others carelessly, and then they can. Somebody can leave a wine bottle and it magnifies.
Those portable barbecues are very dangerous.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, how these fires will change.
Will change all of that,
around that. Well, the wildfire is so intense that it's actually generating its own weather system. Here's our science and technology editor, Tom Clark, to explain.
After the hottest June on record in Europe, continued heat waves through July, and a wet spring feeding vegetation growth, Europe's facing a fire season like it's never seen before. This is the situation, according to the latest satellite data, of fires across the continent, pretty much everywhere. The week 15th to the 22nd of July saw the greatest area burned for any July week on record for the EU. Over in France, satellite image from over the weekend showed, yes, that wind taking the smoke out over the ocean, but now that wind shifted towards the east, bringing that smoke and the fire with it, threatening the city of Bordeaux, only 7 miles from the fire front now, but also taking that smoke into the city where it can present real problems to people. The situation in France reveals that they have seen already breaking all records, not just the number of fires that they record compared to average, but also the extent of wildfires as well, the amount of area burned. And the other thing they're seeing in France, which has complicated the efforts to fight it, are something called pyrocumulonimbus. That's a fire cloud. These have only really been documented before in very intense wildfires in North America and in Australia. And what's happening here is the heat generated by that intense wildfire, fueled by forest in this Gironde area, is taking hot air high into the atmosphere, up to 9 kilometres high, drawing winds in below it and creating very similar conditions that you see during a thunderstorm. Those winds can essentially create the fire's own weather system, making them very hard to predict and manage. But they can also, if it gets intense enough, cause lightning strikes, dry lightning, no rain, which is the downside here, but that lightning can cause subsequent fires. That's something authorities in France haven't seen before. The scale of this fire, something they haven't dealt with in recent history, and fits very much in the models that climate scientists put out for what is still the fastest warming continent on the planet, Europe, right now.
Tom Clark explaining there what a fire cloud is. And it's interesting when he said that, you know, you'd see this in Australia and in North America. They tend to have more extreme weather than we do, not just in the UK, but in Europe. This is really changing the face of Europe.
Yeah, it's the stuff of disaster movies. This kind of really terrifying, and you can't control it once it starts. You know, they're pleased the blaze isn't advancing in France at the moment, but that could quickly change. And it is, we've got to stop the conditions in which it happens. Yes, you can fight it, but you've got to stop the conditions in which it's happening. That's it. That's the only real solution.
I mean, there will be other things they can do. I mean, they're using fire retardants. I mean, there are things that can be. There are measures that can be put into place. Yeah. But Kevin's right. The basic principle is that things are getting much hotter. I mean, places like sort of in the Balearics at the moment, it's unbelievably hot. I mean, Ibiza, I think, is 50 degrees in some places. And I think, you know, these are not temperatures that people can really function in apart from anything else. I mean, you can't really go to work if it's 45 degrees outside. And we're just not used to dealing with it. None of us we're not ready for it at all. We don't have air conditioning. We don't have any of the things that you need to be able to carry on functioning in these temperatures. And that's going to change the way our society works. It's going to be really difficult.
Yeah, we said it's only July as well, in the sense that we're not even
in August. Yeah.
No, these fires are just one consequence.
There does seem to be a sense that the heat is moving slightly back, because I think it's just got a lot hotter in June and July, and August tends to be sort of stormy, doesn't it now?
Yeah, although, I mean, in France, they're expecting this heat wave again, starting from tomorrow, 40 degrees, which, of course, is going to complicate the fight against the fire. Okay, let's take a look at some of the day's other stories now. And Andy Burnham met his first foreign leader today as Prime Minister, welcoming Ukraine's President Zelensky to Portsmouth. He also had good news closer to home. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, to explain.
Nigel Farage and Andy Burnham are now neck and neck as the new Prime Minister steps out onto the world stage for the first time. A week in, and there's a Burnham bounce. For the first time since last April, Labour is no longer behind Reform. A new YouGov Sky News Times poll puts Labour and Reform UK both on 22, the Tories on 21, Greens on 13 and Lib Dems on 11. It's the first time Labour hasn't been behind Nigel Farage's Reform in 15 months. But Andy Burnham told me he knows he can't bank on the polls. You do know that what goes up can come down, right?
Indeed. Yeah, of course. I mean, I wouldn't get carried away by any poll. I am talking a lot about Britain believing again and getting its hope back, and I'm not going to apologise for that.
He's here in Portsmouth, doing some things the same as his predecessor, like standing shoulder to shoulder with President Zelensky.
We are with Ukraine 100%. I am personally with you 100%.
But he's doing some things differently too. Unlike Rachel Reeves, he has shut down suggestions that he might scrap stamp duty or council tax in the first budget later this year. Could you reassure people looking to buy right now that you won't change or scrap stamp duty in the next budget?
Yes, I can say that quite clearly. That won't be happening.
Another sign of a political honeymoon, calling for cross-party talks. Andy Burnham not letting differences on tax with the Tories scupper hopes for social care reform.
Credit to the leaders of the two main parties, Kemi Badenoch and Ed Davey, both of whom have reached out over the weekend to say they're prepared to engage in talks. I think, you know, it's one thing to say that and, you know, another to actually then mean it and try and find common ground. But let's try.
On the world stage, praise from a global figure rises in the polls, enjoying the moment while it lasts.
And let's get the latest now from Rob Powell, who joins us in the studio, because, he's made a lot of announcements today, but Andy Burnham's got another busy day tomorrow.
Yeah, he's going to be making his first intervention around youth unemployment and what he wants to do basically with education, secondary level education. We've got a few more details than we did last hour. Essentially, one part of it is shifting an emphasis away from university and academic routes towards technical routes, but it's also tied up with the broader devolution agenda, where basically he wants central government to work with mayoral authorities, local municipal authorities, to then work with schools to figure out what jobs are needed in areas, what the growth industries are in areas as well, and then work with the schools to tailor the curriculum essentially to fill those gaps. So it wouldn't necessarily, it would mean basically at 14, if you were living in an area where, say, there was, in the example in the government press releases, a boom in AI firms coming up, you would, take maths, you would take those core subjects, academic subjects, but then you'd also take a more technical, vocational, digital qualification. You'd spend some time with local employers as well. So by the time you get to 16, 17, you're already well on the way. And the idea is that when you come out of education, there's less chance of you sort of falling off the edge into a life on welfare, which we're seeing so often now. And it kind of bridges that gap more often. So, tomorrow you'll be hearing a lot about the jobs element of this. The flip side is clearly to try and cut down on the level at which the welfare bill is ballooning. But interestingly, he's written a piece in The Times that's just gone online in the last 20 minutes or so, where I think you can read into it a pretty not so subtle attempt to put the boot into his previous boss, Tony Blair, who of course had the promise of 50% of people, of students to go to university. He says, for too long we've built an education system around the idea there's only one route to success: university, a degree, a desk. This is the legacy of choices Britain made decades ago. Power centralised, industries disappeared across our towns and cities, local apprenticeships faded, technical education pushed into the background. So it's all tied in, I think, to this, broader political theme, yes, around devolution, but also this theme around, 40 years of neoliberalism, of over-centralisation, and this is clearly how he's sort of applying that broader political ideology to what he sees as causing the failures and the end product of youth unemployment.
The world has changed and the jobs market has changed since then.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my head round a Prime Minister who went to Cambridge University and has a cabinet. I can't think of anybody in the cabinet. There might be somebody who didn't go to university. There's not an Alan Johnson, the former postie, who at one time was Home Secretary.
Do as I say, not as I do.
In the back. But he's quite right that vocational education has often been seen as second best, and that's wrong. You don't want this division between, town and gown, or however you want to characterise it. But I don't think you have to knock the number of people going to university and universities themselves to raise vocational education. You want to champion vocational education. And the new skills minister, for instance, Paul Wall, Rochdale MP, used to be a journalist, is well aware that often to get on vocational courses, you need, sort of like a GCSE in English or maths. But actually, the kids who might struggle to get those GCSEs will be great at the vocational subjects, and so you want to break down barriers, yes, and promote vocational. But I don't think there's any need to knock the number of kids going to university, because if he's going to reduce it from 50%, who's going to go? It's not going to be the kids of the people owning and running the country. It's going to be kids from working class families who are often the first in their family to go to university. We should take great pride in that. And I say that at Sunderland University, where I'm a visiting professor, the pride of the kids themselves, the students, young adults, and their parents. So I think he wants to be careful about triggering some type of war here.
OK. I mean, he's talked about going back to the 70s, and this feels like quite a sort of old school kind of industrial manufacturing 70s idea, doesn't it? The idea that you will engage local businesses and that local industry will sort of, in a way, sustain the jobs market, so that if you had a car manufacturing business, then the local kids would go on the manufacturing line. It feels kind of sort of utopian in that sense, and I do think that it also will mean that people will move around a lot less. They'll stay in their communities.
But I suppose he's trying to give people the option to stay, which ties into the whole devolution.
Yeah, absolutely. So exactly, that's what. So the whole devolution idea, where everything is moving away from this centralisation that you were talking about, and that people can stay much more local, and they can build lives locally without all having to migrate to these great centres.
Yeah, but the labour market's changed completely from the 70s.
That's the thing.
I mean, he doesn't really want to go back, in fairness, but the days of huge, massive employers, and I remember growing up on the Italian side of the 70s, some people followed their dads down the pit. One of my brothers did. Others followed their dads into shipyards. In fact, shipyard recruitment, they used to have two forms. If you had a relative in the shipyard, you filled in that form. If you didn't, you filled in another form, and those who had a relative were prioritised. The jobs market isn't like that with big employers now. It's much more atomised. It's more the medium and the small.
With AI, it's about to change potentially completely, literally in the next few years.
And in fairness, it does talk about, some of the job areas that it talks about are AI, life sciences. It talks about cities, creative industries. Although, just saying that out loud, they all seem like industries where, if you were going to work in AI, I would have thought you probably would have a degree, and you go to university and get a degree in computer science or life sciences, and create. If you were getting into sort of writing or acting and things like that. So, it's where the mismatch comes, isn't it? Because he's feeding off a sort of a kind of nostalgic, in a sense, vision of the past that he wants to kind of recreate for people, but has actually the industries that he's trying to build that off changed so much.
Apprenticeships are highly prized in families, and there's often not enough of them. If you can get apprenticeships up and off, and more of them, the Conservatives will say they did increase it, Labour say no, they didn't, there's fewer numbers, then it'll be a success. He's addressing the issue, which I think is great. I'm not sure he's got all the answers yet, but then he never pretends to have all the answers, which I think is quite refreshing.
I mean, the thing about him, the interesting thing about him is that he is filling the airwaves with stuff, isn't he? It's a sort of prolonged wall-to-wall, daily kind of release of information and ideas and concepts, which is, normally this is the silly season. Normally we'd be talking about cats that look like Hitler or something. Whereas now this, normally it's predatory seagulls, but he's got us going. He's feeding.
But any indication that maybe August will slow down, and maybe this is the big push first 2 weeks, and then there might be a lull?
Yeah, I think the first 2 weeks are the ones that are spelt out for, last week were some of the kind of quick hit cost of living, we're going to actually announce some stuff and spend some money type policies, even if it's not entirely 100% clear where the money's actually coming from. Yeah. This week is the sort of more knotty stuff. You've done defence today, to an extent. I mean, not really. You've sort of done the easy part of defence in terms of the reassurance and the meeting Zelensky. The difficult part of defence comes when it's finding 5 billion quid to plug the hole in the investment plan, and then the rest to meet the targets that John Healey resigned over. You're doing NEETs tomorrow, but again, it's not the full story. And then social care, maybe the hardest of the bunch, on Wednesday with a big speech. But again, I don't think there's any indication that he's going to come out with a full plan to do social.
So it's all sort of mood music, isn't it? Yeah. It's all setting.
It's got a vibe.
Sometimes make it simple.
We've got the road show. It's appearing near you. The Prime Minister in a Kiss Me Quick hat.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got to move on now, because after the attack in Berlin over the weekend, armed police will be deployed to protect people at this year's Brighton Pride Festival.
jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Armed police will be deployed to protect people at this year's Brighton Pride Festival. Specialist teams, including plainclothed officers, will also be on the streets following the attack on Berlin's Pride event over the weekend, in which one person was killed. There is growing anger in Germany about why the main suspect, who was a known extremist, was not in jail. Well, the Defense Secretary Wes Streeting told Sky News the attack showed why Pride events were still necessary.
In many respects, things are different and better now than they've ever been. We've got more equality laws. We tend to have a live and let live approach. But hate crime's also on the rise. There are lots of people who I think don't accept diversity and difference in our society. And that's why Pride is a celebration, but it's also a protest against those who do not accept life in the 21st century, do not accept people loving each other in same-sex relationships, and in the very worst cases would seek to do us harm.
So news there, Kevin, that the Brighton Pride Festival will now get additional security because of the events in Germany.
I think that's probably it's sad and reflects the time we're in, but it's the right thing to do. Although I suspect there are always armed police now at these events because of the fears of attack. That wasn't the case in the past, but it is now.
Yeah, and a lot of course, criticism in Germany that this man that blatantly should have been in jail, wasn't.
Yeah, I mean the trouble with people like that is that until they actually do something, you can't actually put them in jail.
But he had been convicted.
He had been convicted. I didn't know that. Oh gosh.
And then it was a non-custodial sentence.
It's a non-custodial sentence. Yeah. Okay, yes. Well, that is a bit of a lesson, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, we often discover people who are involved in terrorism or horrific events in the UK were known to the police or the Prevent programme. They weren't judged a risk, and a mistake was made. And there's clearly a mistake being made in Germany here. It's how do you rectify that going forward? So next time it may be prevented.
Yeah. Now it's time to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Well, according to the Financial Times, one of Andy Burnham's planned welfare reforms involves asking schools to tailor their curriculum to encourage pupils to get into work that might be needed locally. Teach pupils for local jobs is how The Guardian describes it. And on that story, The Times makes reference to hard hat schools. The Telegraph hears that Mr. Burnham is expected to say that the goal of his predecessor, Tony Blair, to have half of school leavers go to university was a mistake. Mr. Burnham is also on the front of the Daily Mail, with speculation the new Prime Minister could impose a 10% tax on all inheritance. The Eye describes the fight against European wildfires as a race against time before the next heat wave hits. The Metro reports on the sentencing hearing for funeral director Robert Bush, including emotional testimony from the loved ones of people whose remains he mistreated. Sorry will never be enough, is how the Mirror sums up those victim impact statements. Well, also on that story, The Express has this headline: bodies were piled up like in a horror scene. Meanwhile, the Star pays tribute to the comedian and wildlife presenter Bill Oddie, whose death was announced today. And The Sun pictures a woman who looks like Andy Burnham. And apparently calls herself Mandy Burnham. I don't know whether she calls herself Mandy Burnham, but that's the headline anyway. So,
genius.
Yeah, there you go. Front page of The Sun. All right, stop giggling.
Sorry,
Let's go back to the serious news. So let's start with page 7 of the Times. You got to stop giggling now.
I'm trying to work out which one's Andy Burnham.
This wipe the smile right off your face. Well, maybe not. Burnham rules out scrapping council tax and stamp duty, because there had been talk about this.
Yes.
He did ruled out the stamp duty to some codes, because, of course, otherwise no one would buy a house until it was actually announced.
So the stamp duty thing is to be fair, Kemi Badenoch has said that she would abolish stamp duty. So, I mean, there's a little bit of stuff going on there. But the changes to council tax, I think, are the ones that would really, really, really affect people, because it would affect people who, you know, maybe bought their house for X and now their house is worth Y, and now they're going to pay. It was 0.48% tax of the house value that was being proposed, which of course would disproportionately affect houses in London, houses in the southeast, where property prices are much higher, and property prices are higher not through any fault of the people who buy them, but just that's the market. House price inflation has been out of control in this country for a very long time, and it would actually, I think it would be very unfair. It would be very badly received.
That's in a policy paper, but it's in fairness, if it would reduce. How much is paid by? 77% of houses. So yes, 23% would pay more, but 77 would pay less.
But the people who live in this area already pay more for everything else. Their lives are already much more expensive.
I know, but 77% would pay less. But he says he's not going to do this.
Good.
He says at this moment.
I think he don't know when the moment might change.
Yeah, but of course, council tax is incredibly regressive, and in England is based on 1991 property prices. There's been no revision since then. Somebody in a 3-bed semi in Blackpool can be paying around the same rate as somebody living in a nice house in Kensington, or dare I say it, Clarence House, if you're a king. So the whole system is skewed, and the problem we would have, and it's easy for Kemi Badenoch in opposition to say, I'll abolish that. Well, where are you going to get the money from to fill that, the hole you'd create? You'd have to come up with something. And council tax needs reforming, replacing. But, you know, the losers you mentioned, they'd be the ones who would punish you. And the gainers may not thank you very much. They just pocket it. And that's why it becomes a big political issue. And we're still stuck on 1991 property valuations in England.
Any attack on property in this country is always guaranteed to be a vote loser. I think it's a real problem because more than any other country in Europe, really, the Brits are homeowners, and their homes are their castles, and it is what most people put most of their money and their work into. And if you come for homes, you're really playing with fire.
I mean, in fairness, he's saying right now that that's not the case.
But
he also says...
But I mean, Kevin is right. There may be some scope for adjustment there, but I don't think something as drastic as this would happen.
He did point out people who come within 100 yards of him and then being quoted as expressing...
Especially if on top of that, then you might be doing a 10% death tax. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So you're kind of... There's lots of...
I'd love him to tackle council tax and reform it and make it fairer. I'd love him to tackle social care.
He's trying to balance, you know, all the things that he might need to finance. And then on page 2 of the Times, we have the reminder that he has to deal with a very volatile global situation, which is going to make everything worse when it comes to energy prices and just finances in general. So their headline, Iran war will keep gas prices high into winter and beyond. Good reminder now that, of course, the Strait of Hormuz is still a mess, no real headway being made there. What have you made of this story, Sam?
Well, I think this is just one of those stories that's going to rumble on and on and on, because the problem is that we've got Donald Trump in charge of America, and with him in that seat, you know, this situation is only going to get worse. I mean, I think even people who, you know, maybe supported what he was trying to do in Iran have now decided that it's all rubbish, and he is increasingly volatile. He's falling out with all sorts of people that he was previously allies with. I don't know if any of your viewers saw the the press thing that he did the other day, where he's put on a hat saying Donald Trump 2028, and he's now at the correspondence thing, and you know he seems to have really gone.
I mean, worth pointing out that in fairness, the strikes from the US to Iran have stopped, I think, 2 consecutive nights. Then again, you know,
but he's lost there, hasn't he? Donald Trump.
The Strait is still effectively closed.
Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. Thank you very much. You started something you can't end, and that regime is
the
stronger.
impact is being felt not just here, but here as well.
Cost of living is the #1 issue, way ahead any public services or migration for most people, and if they're going to be £200 higher because of this, which according to
the analysts
Wood Mackenzie, the energy consultancy, that will wipe out the 45p average cut from taking VAT off electricity. And the last budget took £150 off sort of renewable social costs and so on your bill. So you won't be worse off, but you won't be better off.
No.
Yeah. And that's a political issue for him as well as an issue for people struggling with household budgets.
He has suggested, hasn't he, drilling?
Yeah, in the North Sea.
Yes, but that won't bring down prices. Because it's a globally traded commodity.
Let's get one quick story in before we go to the break. Page 8 of the Eye. Case put forward to make voting compulsory. This is one of those discussions that often crops up.
Just yes. Yes, people should vote.
The Institute for Public...
Good answer. Sorry.
The Institute for Public Policy Research, left-leaning think tank, very influential with Starmer. I suspect it will have influence with Burnham too. Says, look, it gives everyone a stake in society. The problem with it is, what is your sanction? I think £10 as a fine has been suggested. But the last election, the turnout was 60%. So 40% of people didn't vote. Australia have compulsory voting, and it's much higher. It's very hard to actually bring it in when so few people are voting.
As long as you have on the ballot paper none of the above.
That's one of the
proposals. So people can vote for no one. You can't, otherwise you have to spoil ballot.
Well, you can go in and draw a penis on or whatever you like now to spoil your ballot paper.
I don't know what you like to do in the privacy of the voting booth.
I think on that note, we might have to...
Sorry. But some people do, not me. I always vote.
But you do have to have none of the... Yeah, if you have a none of the above option, I think yes.
OK. Well, one of the things being considered. Well, at least in this article. Coming up next, we're going to take a first look at what's making the front page of more of tomorrow's papers. Stay with us.
best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Right, time now for a closer look at what's making tomorrow's papers. And we will look at the front page of The Star, and there it is, Bill Oddie, who has died today, 1941-2026. Their headline there, we've lost a goodie and a bestie. Kevin.
Yeah, from the goodies, which I remember. I think it ran in the 70s and the early 80s, and it was just very funny. Three blokes larking around. It was kind of a softer version of Monty Python, if you like. And then he was a great bird watcher and nature lover. And no, I think it's really sad because he was a very engaging character.
He was, and he became a household name in the 1970s as a member of the comic trio The Goodies, alongside Tim Brooke Taylor and Graham Garden. Now, their single, The Funky Gibbon, reached a high of number 4 in the UK charts.
Gibbon, half a chance, do the funky gibbon. We are here to show you how. Ooh, the funky gibbon. The funky gibbon is just like you, so come on to the funky gibbon now. The funky gibbon. The funky gibbon.
They don't make them like that now, thank heavens.
We used to get audiences of 15 million.
I mean, it's quite a tune, that. I mean, I have to say.
You were dancing?
It might go back. Maybe we should make it go to number 1.
It might. It might.
In tribute.
I'm going to download it on Spotify and see if we can get it started.
Yeah.
But they were huge at the time. I mean,
Yes.
TV's atomised
And he really
now,
managed to reinvent himself in so many ways. I'm sure there's a lot of people that loved him.
And they were sort of
for his
stalwarts
TV
also
work.
of Radio 4 comedy, weren't they?
And he struggled with his mental health, and so I admired him for coming
on.
back and exactly.
OK, well, if anybody misses the World Cup, should we find out what Gianni Infantino's up to? Because it's in the Metro, I believe.
Infantino by name, infantile by nature.
Or Sico Fantino.
Sico Fantino, okay. Yes.
So the headline here, Infantino plays the trump card because he had a bit of a meltdown, didn't he? He went on his Instagram and sort of said that it was the best World Cup ever, only joy and happiness, no violence.
No violence.
Did he not watch
Well, I mean,
Argentina game?
yeah,
Anyway,
exactly.
no incidents, 100% safety and security. Yeah, not for the people that were not allowed in the first place. What have you made of this slight meltdown, Kevin? Would you call it that, or is he just, fighting for?
No, it isn't. No, look, he shouldn't be there. I mean, he should be out.
The job.
Football isn't just a beautiful game. It's corrupted by money and power. But go back to his inaugural Peace Prize for Donald Trump. Well, you go through that tournament. You think the referee from Somalia wasn't allowed into the US. Why didn't he intervene and call that out? Trump had the ban on the American player
following Bellingham.
Lifted. UEFA said a line. That's a European footballing body, said a line was crossed. And then Iran, one of the participants, wasn't allowed to stay in the US and had to keep going over the border. I mean, these were all transgressions that would not have been allowed in the past. And Infantino is just
I'm going to play devil's advocate and say that maybe he was being pragmatic because Trump can be a bit erratic and he knew that, it's a World Cup mainly in the US.
But it doesn't matter, it's over now, so you can just be honest about it. So I don't really understand. You're asking the wrong person, so I don't really understand football, and I've never seen this man before in my life. But I did watch those Argentina games. They didn't seem to me to be very happy, or there was quite a lot of violence, and it was quite unpleasant. So he must be watching a different game.
More recent World Cups have not had violence between fans. I mean, that's gone now. I'm glad to say.
Nature wasn't even.
There was all that stuff with the Argentina fans trying to keep the English players players awake, wasn't there?
Yeah, but
but
the integrity of the game, when the referee is banned, Iran are banned from the US except on the day of playing.
Well, we'll see what happens.
And a ban is lifted on an American player. These were all terrible moments for football.
Well, we'll see what happens in 4 years' time for the next World Cup.
Where is the next World Cup?
I think it's Spain, Portugal, Morocco, I think.
Oh, OK.
And then Saudi, the one after that. OK, we've got less than a minute. Front page of the Sun. This is your moment, Sarah, because I've been wanting to talk about
Mandy Burnham.
Mandy Burnham.
I mean, this is good. If he ever needs a lookalike,
I mean, we should explain that it's a woman, a dead ringer for the new Prime Minister, calling herself Mandy Burnham on TikTok.
Is that her on the right as we look, and Andy Burnham, the Prime Minister, on the left, is it?
Do you think, I mean, has she got good enough eyelashes, do we think?
Well, she's got the glasses.
She's got the eyebrows. She's got the eyebrows.
I like her sense of fun and mischief. I mean, that's it. Comparing herself, calling herself Mandy, because her real name's Emma from Swansea.
Enough.
And she likes rugby and real ale.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Right, we're going to have to leave it there. Kevin, Sarah, thank you both so much. And coming up in sport, Chelsea look to add Premier League experience to their squad with the club targeting Jordan Henderson and Danny Welbeck.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Over the next 45 days, an estimate 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna. Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. We take you to the heart of the story in the largest democracy in the world.
The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories.
Sky News has been given exclusive data.
Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
I bet right now you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation.
So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
An historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Let's get the latest now from Sky Sports News and David.
Right, let's talk Wimbledon. And from a British perspective, the real headline has come from breakthrough star Arthur Ferry, who was handed a wild card to the tournament but progressed to the semi-final. As you can see, very pleased to say that Arthur joins me now. Arthur, really good to see you. Huge congratulations. What a journey you've been on the past fortnight. Can you even begin to start to sum it up?
Yeah, it's been an incredible fortnight. 6 matches and lots of firsts for me. It's going to take a while to all sink in and process it all, but yeah, it's been incredible.
Because you look at the stats, I mean, you became only the second wild card in men's singles history to make it to the semi-finals. You were ranked 114th in the world when you entered this tournament. Before it began, did you ever imagine that you could get through to the semi-finals?
Yeah, I've always had a lot of self-belief in my ability to play against the top players in the world, and yeah, it was just a matter of stringing wins together, and you know, in those slams, if you want to do well, you have to win a lot of matches. So yeah, that was the case. Past 2 weeks, I was able to back up wins with more good tennis and keep going. So yeah, I've always had the self-belief, and it was, yeah, in my eyes, just a matter of time.
And of course, beyond that second round in the singles, you were kind of Britain's only hope as we went through the tournament. Did you feel that level of expectation a lot more as the tournament progressed?
Not so much. I mean, I think there was a lot of attention anyway as a Brit, and yeah, the last Brit definitely contributed to that as well. But no, I was just trying to focus on myself and yeah, play for myself and just focus on one match at a time.
One of the matches that a lot of people are talking about is that Grigor Dimitrov match, because he's so well loved at Wimbledon as well. You then also beat Caboli in straight sets. When you were playing those matches, how are you feeling in yourself? Because these guys, you know, seeded in the top 10 in the world, and you're beating them. Does that make you think, you know, I can really compete against these guys?
100%. The match against Dimitrov was, yeah, my first one on centre court and the second 5-set win in a row, so it was really a special moment. And then playing Caboli in quarters, my first quarter-final in a Grand Slam. He'd done it before, but I felt like I was really confident that I could beat him. I'd beaten him in Australia, and that really helped me to believe that I could get it done.
Yeah. Then the game against Alexander Zverev. What are your takeaways from that one?
Yeah, it was another step up against Alex Zverev. Yeah, an incredible player. He was riding off that win at Roland Garros and was playing with a lot of confidence. Very tough to return his serve, and he was playing freely. So difficult, but yeah, a lot of lessons learned and valuable lessons that I'm going to bring forward.
Yeah, and it was your birthday yesterday, men's final yesterday. Did you watch it? What did you make of it?
Yeah, it would have been great to be playing the final on my birthday. I would have signed for that.
And now let's take a look at the weather.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Southern parts will see heat building again this week, peaking on Wednesday, while the cooler north can expect rain. Scotland will be mostly wet at first tomorrow, with heavy rain in parts of the west, while the northwest of Ireland and northwestern England can expect more patchy outbreaks. Northern Ireland, the rest of Ireland and Wales, meanwhile, look rather dull and locally damp, whereas southern and eastern England will be dry with plenty of sunshine. Scotland will see early rain clearing to the Northern Isles during the morning, with a few showers moving in behind. Elsewhere, it will turn mostly dry with sunny spells.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional